You are welcome along to a special edition of the Huddle Breakdown interview series, where we are both honored and excited and thrilled, really, to welcome Thomas Gronnemark, who we just went, I have to say it now, Thomas. I mean, you've been referred to as the doctor of throw-ins. This is off the top of my head now, just because you mentioned it before we went live. But you're the world's leading expert on throw-ins. And not only that, you have a really interesting biography and background as how you got to this point. So first of all, welcome. Let's get into it. Can you please lay out a little bit? Because I think your history in football, your migration into athletics, the work that you've done, thinking about things relative to almost a kinesiology. I think of you as almost like a polymath of sports, which I think you bring to what you do in football. So can you just kind of briefly summarize what that extensive background is?
Yeah, you can say I played football myself until I was around 20 years, played on the highest U19 level in Denmark, also played against great players like, for example, Thomas Gravesen, who, later played for Celtic, but also Real Madrid and the Danish national team. But I wasn't good enough to be a professional football player, so I changed to sports, to athletics in the mid-90s, and I was quite talented. So already the first year I came on the Danish national team, and I was there for 6 years, running 100, 200, 400 meters in relays, several time Danish champion, also European relay champion in the 4x4 meter relay for club teams in 2000 in Paris. But then in year 2002, I changed sport to the Danish bobsleigh team, and I was there for 4 years. We were traveling all around the world, not only Europe, but also Canada and the States. So that was a fantastic 4 years. And we of course, we had a lot of traditional sports teamwork, but we were also really innovative. So it was actually in the middle of that bobsleigh period in 2004 where I got the idea to be a throwing coach. So that's been my at least one of my jobs the last 20 years.
Did you ever get to compete against the Jamaican bobsled team or meet John Candy? That's my bobsled oriented question.
We compete against the Jamaican bobsleigh team, but we didn't get to meet John Candy, obviously, because he was only an actor in the movie. But we competed several times against Jamaicans, and that was, of course, fantastic. We've all been seeing Cool Running, so fantastic movie.
Well, I'll start off with my first serious question now, and then I'll pass it over to Alan. My first question comes to, because we're so analytics and data focused on what we talk about and do on this show, and with the Huddle Breakdown. What we always talk about, you have to measure. Measure. You have to measure. So, in your extensive experience across all of these clubs globally, what is the type of data that you use that they kind of partner with you? Like when you were working with Liverpool or Michelin or a club in Mexico. I mean, again, for our audience sake, you've worked all over the world. What are the data specifics that you use to measure, so that you can kind of inform your methodology? Because I'm sure this has worked over 20 years. Those things have changed. The data capture has changed. So can you just kind of talk about how that's evolved over the years and kind of how you think about the data part of this?
Yeah. So you can say I'm working in three different levels. So first of all, we have, how can you say, traditional data. So in some clubs, we have really big data, like Liverpool FC, where there's a lot of people behind the scene crushing those numbers, not only on the daily basis on the pitch and beside the pitch, but also in big offices somewhere. So, of course, that type of data, I use that. I also, of course, coach on the pitch myself. And then when I do analysis myself of matches, and again, I've been coaching plus 30 pro teams, been part of 15 titles in international football, but let's just take Liverpool. It's the most known, but the 5 years I was there, I analyzed 300 games, so that was approximately 15,000 throw-ins, because it was also the opponent's throw-ins. And I've seen every throw-in like 3, 4, 5, 6 times each. So when I do analysis, I'm not just putting it into a machine and then read the numbers. There's a lot of good things around that, but it's also really important for me to say that I also see a lot of bad data, at least around throw-ins, because that's what I understand. So again, it's really important for me to say that, of course, data analysis, that's the future. It's also where we are now. And it's really important for the sport, for society to take the right decisions. But let me give some examples around throw-ins and bad data. I've seen research who said, okay, let's see if the thrower throws to a teammate. And then this data said, wow, we had this amount of percentage. The challenge is that there's a really big difference if you throw to the feet or throw in front of a player who's running, or throwing it directly into the chest, or throwing it into a player in pressure. So you can say that because you're throwing to a teammate, of course it's a good start, but it doesn't say anything about the quality of the throw in itself. I've also seen some data where they're measuring all throw-ins. And of course, it's better than not measuring anything at all, but sometimes it could give the wrong picture. But let's just say Manchester City from the Premier League. They were like, if you measure all their throw-ins, you'll have a lot of no-pressure throw-ins, like I call it. So it means that, for example, the central defender can just receive the throw-in like without any pressure at all. And if you take that like as a possession, it doesn't necessarily say anything about their throw-in quality, but it says it can, of course, but it also says something about the amount and type of pressure they're under. And then let me give the last example around bad data around throw-ins. There was also big research in the Premier League where they looked at all throw-ins in a full season, and their conclusion was that if you throw backwards, there's less chance of losing the ball inside the pitch. A little big, the risk was a little bit bigger, and then you throw it forward, there's a biggest risk. So the conclusion was, don't throw it forward. So I think that's also bad data because they didn't take in consideration what type of.
We hope you enjoyed this free preview from all of us here at the Huddle Breakdown. We know you have options and we really appreciate you tuning in. To hear the rest of this episode and for much more Huddle Breakdown content, head on over to www.huddlebreakdown.com. We hope you consider subscribing. Thank you.